Okay, excellent. So we got to the point where we'd managed to generate these questions and this ground truth gold standard answer, which we're going to use in our measurements. Now we need to create the actual chains that we want to test. So remember here, I'm dealing with a lot of LangChain. You have got the mini series on LangChain for you to start understanding how these chains actually run and tie together. So the first thing we're going to need is some sort of prompt, and so this is a basic prompt that we create, which is answer the question with information from the context. Give me some context, give me a question. And so we create that, and then I've got this function which is just going to create some sort of chain. I'm going to be able to pass that in some sort of embedding model and a large language model, and that will create me the chain which I can then invoke. So we had two systems proposed. We've got one which is GPT 3.5 and we've got the other which is GPT 4.0. And there you go, we create 3.5, we give it the large embedding model we created, and we are accompanying GPT-4 with this smaller embedding model, and we're going to see which one is best. So let's just have a sanity check with chain 4, small. Here we invoke it, can we eat wild animals? And yeah, we get some sort of response from that system. The provided context does not directly address whether wild animals can be eaten. It primarily discusses the legal, etc., so on and so forth. So let's just remind ourselves of this data set that we created with the questions, the context, and the ground truth. And we're actually going to use that to create the final data set that RAGAS is going to accept. And as you can see in this function here, it does require four things. It requires the question, which we've already got from this data set. It requires an answer, which is going to be generated from one of our chains. It is going to get the context from this chain, and it is going to get the ground truths that we generated. Okay, so this question we already have, these ground truths we already had. We are going to be measuring how well this context we've pulled from our embedding model does, and we're going to be testing our answer from our RAG system. That's getting converted into a pandas data frame. We're creating a data set from it. That's all. So we can do that for the GPT-3 with large embedding model, GPT-4 with small embedding model, and we end up with these RAGAS data sets. And you'll see now, when we get RAGAS, we are going to import all of the metrics that we want. And we create a little function here, which is going to run this RAGAS evaluate. We give it a RAGAS data set, and we say what we want it to measure. It's as simple as that. And then we get some results object, which is a type RAGAS. I'm just converting that thing into a pandas data frame, and there you go. We're just getting rid of some of the metadata just so we get some pure statistics back. And these are the results then for GPT 3.5 with the large model, and then below we've got the results. So for GPT-4. So the context precision for GPT-3 is slightly higher. We see GPT-4 has been a little bit more faithful. So that essentially means that it's not inventing stuff. All the stuff it's saying is just from the context. You know, it's sticking faithfully to the stuff in the information in the context. And then do we have any other big difference? One is the context recall, which we expect to be higher here, significantly higher with our nice embedding model. And then we get to these sort of metrics at the bottom, which just sort of say, well, how well is the system performing in general? And so this sort of answer similarity is very similar, which is basically saying that the answers from our system are pretty close to the answers from the ground truth. But we see there's a lot more correctness, answer correctness in this model, which with GPT-3, which is relying on the large embedding model. So maybe the conclusion from all this is, maybe the large language model is not that important as long as we've got some good embedding model. So the important thing to remember, the key takeaway here, is that once you've done, and it's not a huge amount of work, once you've got some questions and some ground truth, and you've manipulated everything into this format that RAGAS requires, then you're going to get out a load of numbers, and all that is essentially not going to be a huge amount of work. The main work here is taking these numbers, looking closely at the definitions, and figuring out exactly if your model is doing well or not. So that's it for RAGAS. You've seen how to set those things up. Be careful with the token generation, because this RAGAS is doing loads of stuff in the background, and if you're not careful, next time you go and look at your OpenAI account, you might find that it's been hit quite significantly. That said, you can configure this RAGAS so that it's using different large language models, so there are options available to avoid those costs. Just be careful before you send it thousands and thousands of examples and find yourself with a hefty bill. So that's it for this, and the final video we'll be looking at next time out is going to be looking at starting to fine-tune with our data some of these models.